The Elders of the Universe. The Collector, the Grandmaster, plenty of other weirder ones. The Elders are an extremely powerful group, but at the same time, they are some of the most straightforward cosmic entities in all of Marvel. Now, I know you don't often hear the word straightforward used when listening to someone talk about weird comic book cosmology, but in this case, the relative simplicity of the Elders is kind of the entire point. The Elders all possess incredible cosmic might that they each use for one very specific thing, and only that thing. The Explorer explores things, the Trader trades things, the Grandmaster, well, he doesn't grandmast things. The common joke with the Elders of the Universe is that all their names end in ER, but this is not actually the case. What is true, though, is that the Elders are all named after the thing that they do. Despite having hyper-specific domains, though, the Elders are not technically gods. In fact, they were once mortals. Each Elder was at one point in history a regular person who, through a combination of death, tragedy, and single-minded obsession, rose to cosmic power. In today's video, I will be going over every single Elder of the Universe that has ever appeared in Marvel Comics, from the villainous to the indifferent to the downright silly. But before we start getting to the roster, let's go over what makes an Elder an Elder. This sounds like an easy task at first, especially since I just set them up as pretty straightforward, but no, the qualifications to be an Elder of the Universe are wildly vague. However, this also makes them less complicated than you would expect, which I know sounds like a contradiction, but just bear with me. The earliest days of the Elders are shrouded in mystery, and for good reason, because according to the official Marvel timeline, they started showing up about 5 to 6 billion years before present day. Most of the Elders are representatives of the first intelligent species to ever arise in the universe. Specifically, they are the last representatives of those species, and them being the sole survivors of their races is key to this whole concept. See, in the Marvel multiverse, many weird cosmic forces exist, and they vary quite a bit in terms of how much or how little they are actually explained and defined. On the how little side of the scale, we have something called the Power Primordial. What exactly is the Power Primordial is a question that, unfortunately, I cannot really answer. Marvel has never nailed down whether it is a force that is inherent to reality or something that the beings who would become Elders created themselves. There have been conflicting reports on that. Fortunately, for our purposes today, where it came from doesn't matter nearly as much as how it works, and we do know that. The Power Primordial is not particularly exclusive, at least as cosmic forces go. It is not limited to the highest classes of metaphysical beings or anything like that. Any average Joe on the street could theoretically gain access to all of it, if they meet one tiny little condition, which is being the last living member of your species anywhere in the universe. It is a force that prevents the extinction of intelligent life. When a sentient species has been met with so much destruction that only one representative remains, the collective life force that their species once possessed kind of condenses into that person, becoming Power Primordial and providing access to all of the benefits thereof. That genuinely seems to be it. Now, to my knowledge, we've never seen a Power Primordial activation in a comic itself, so I'm not sure exactly what that looks like at the moment in which it happens. But if there are other qualifications to gain the power, I don't know them. It really seems like if you are the last member of your kind, then you just get access to this cosmic energy. So what can you do with the stuff? What are the powers primordial? Well, let me tell you, it gives you what I would consider to be the strongest power in all of comic books: hand-wavy cosmic plot convenience. You know how comics will sometimes just say the words cosmic energy, and then since no one can prove what that exactly can or cannot do, it just does whatever it needs to? Yeah, Power Primordial is absolutely that. It does get more interesting, I promise, but as for the specific use cases, whatever. Teleportation, energy manipulation, reality warping sometimes, Power Primordial does what it needs to. There is one thing that Power Primordial definitely does, though: provide its users with immortality. If you wield this power, you do not age and cannot die. Though notably, you can still be hurt. You'll just heal from it, and you can heal from anything. We've seen an Elder tank full-on decapitation before. Granted, they don't have like a combat healing factor, and growing an entire head back apparently took years, but if you can grow your head back, who cares how long it takes? Now, there's an important detail about this, or more specifically, an important detail that is actually not present. That's all I have to say about how Power Primordial works, and I haven't mentioned specific jobs or roles or purposes yet. The whole bit of the Elders is that they all do one thing, but that is actually not inherent to the Power Primordial. That is a thing that they chose. In the very early days of the universe, when people were starting to access Power Primordial for the first time, several of the newly created immortals got together and formed a club, basically. Nothing more or less than that. They just all became aware of each other's existence, and since they were in similar situations, got together so that they could hang out and make long-term plans. That club was the Elders of the Universe. This is why I said just a couple minutes ago that the qualifications to be an Elder are pretty vague, but also that wasn't complicated. It's a club. Elder of the Universe is not a grand cosmically assigned role. Power Primordial is a cosmically assigned thing, but being an Elder is just a title that a bunch of these people have given themselves. Power Primordial User and Elder of the Universe are not exactly the same thing. As you will see later in this video, there are Elders who do not fit the qualifications and do not have Power Primordial because they were similar enough to just get admitted into the Cosmic Club. Hence it not being complicated. The rules are flexible because they're not strict cosmic rules. But what about the specific things that they do? I've still been dancing around that, and the reason is that in the earliest days of the club, the Elders of the Universe did not have their hyper-specific roles yet. They were just immortals hanging out. And then one of them did die, and that understandably caused a bit of a shake-up within their ranks. I will talk in detail about who died later because it'll fit better there, but for now's purposes, all that matters is how. How did an immortal die? Turns out that there is one death condition on Power Primordial, and it is that you still have to want to live. If a user of Power Primordial loses their will to live, then they will stop living and die. This happened to one of the Elders, the other Elders did not want it to happen to them, and thus they came up with a plan to avoid it. It was Tanalir Tivan, the Elder who would then become the Collector, that first suggested the idea of the Elders dedicating their immortality towards certain pursuits, giving their life meaning by pursuing mastery of something that was very specific, but also not so hyper-specific that they would get bored of it. This is why they all have their things. It is literally just something to keep them occupied so that they don't get bored enough to die. It might sound stupid at first, but I really love this as a world-building element. This is why right in the intro I said that I don't consider the Elders to be technically gods, because their power is not directly tied to their role, it's kind of tied by proxy. Their Elder purposes are more psychological techniques than anything else, though over billions of years of single-minded obsession, the line between psychological technique and inherent power does get blurred a bit. And with that last bit established, that's really all that there is to the Elders of the Universe at a foundational level, which is why I think it's fair to call them pretty simple. The Elders are a cosmic club with 3 loose entry qualifications. 1, you have to be the last of your species. 2, you have to get access to the Power Primordial from that. And 3, you have to dedicate your immortality from the Power Primordial to some sort of specific pursuit so you don't get bored and die. But then all these qualifications can be waived if they feel like it. There is another layer to their immortality, because there's a whole thing where Grandmaster played a game against death and lost intentionally, and the punishment was that him and all the other Elders were banished from Death's realm, which means that they are, like, literally immortal, which kind of defeats the purpose of their whole thing. But don't worry about that, it's not that important in the grand scheme of things. So now that you know how the Elders work, who are they? This is what the vast majority of this video is going to be dedicated to. Who are these ancient beings, and what are the things that they have chosen to do? There are a lot of elders out there, more than I was expecting. According to one cosmic source, there's about 1,000 elders in existence, which is far more than I could reasonably cover in a YouTube video. Fortunately, the singular nature of the elders seems to make most of them keep to themselves, so if we take a look at just the elders that have actually showed up in the comics, the number is only 20, plus a couple side characters and clarifications, bringing the total to 25. Still a lot, but far better than 1,000. Since this group is so loosely organized, they don't have an official hierarchy or anything like that, which means that for purposes of this video, I'm just going to be doing the easy thing and presenting them alphabetically. That means we begin the roster of the Elders of the Universe with the Architect. Okay, starting with the Architect is like the one problem with doing it alphabetically, but just bear with me. We do know for sure that there is an elder named the Architect. This is made very clear in the first mention of them, when another elder, who of course we will be talking about later, says that they commissioned the Architect to build them something. This is also the last mention of the Architect. We've never seen the Architect, we don't know what they look like, we have no idea if they trend more towards good or neutral or evil, though I would guess neutral because all we know about them is that they build things. They are an elder, and their name is the Architect, but because of the elder's whole deal, that actually does give us a decent chunk of what the character is about. I don't love beginning the list with the least known character that we're going to be talking about, but if nothing else, it should prove that this video is going to be very thorough. Also, for what it's worth, I'm kind of surprised that Marvel has not used the Architect more. If Architect really has been floating around the universe building things non-stop for 5 billion years, that makes them a free pass for the lore of any ancient ruins or cosmic superstructures that a Marvel writer could ever want. You'd think that would be something that had been used before, but not yet apparently. There's literally nothing else I can say about them, so let's move on to the next and thankfully far more relevant elder, the Astronomer. The Astronomer's real name is Seguin Gallio, no relation to Selene Gallio of X-Men comics, they just have coincidentally similar names, in Astronomer's case definitely as a reference to Galileo. Astronomer's purpose is mapping the universe, charting the locations and movements of celestial bodies. This is in and of itself a harmless and maybe even beneficial role, but unfortunately, Astronomer is also, independently of his purpose, super arrogant and is actually one of the elders responsible for the group's first evil plan. Through his research, Astronomer stumbled upon the true origin of Galactus, who, for anyone who does not know, comes from a previous incarnation of the universe. Galactus was a normal man in the previous reality, then he was the last survivor as that reality was destroyed, and he was spit out into the next one, which is where he gained all of his great cosmic power. Despite the fact that Galactus has really nothing to do with the Elders, some of the more narcissistic of the group, Astronomer included, took his mere existence personally, not liking the fact that if Galactus was around, they were no longer the oldest beings in reality. So, they vowed to destroy him. The plan to do this had 3 parts. First off, have Grandmaster trick Death into barring the Elders from her realm, which would enhance and solidify their immortality, and then step 2, kill Galactus. Step 3 is where it gets complicated, as the death of Galactus would cause a cascade of cosmic weirdness resulting in the destruction of the universe, but since the Elders were truly immortal, they would get the same treatment that Galactus did, meaning that they would survive and get spit out into the next universe, where they would definitively be the oldest beings. It was a whole big complicated thing, made even more complicated by the fact that Galactus vastly outranks the Elders in terms of cosmic power. So to kill him, the Elders tried to collect all of the Infinity Stones, which Astronomer was also useful for. He could figure out where they were hiding. The plan did not work, obviously. They did get through the first step and upgrade their immortality, but then they were foiled by Silver Surfer, and so the universe did not get destroyed. And remember, all of this nonsense happened because the Elders were butthurt that they were not the oldest beings in the universe. So despite astronomy being a pretty cool thing, this plan definitely marked Astronomer as one of the more evil Elders. However, not all of them are evil, some of them are actually pretty nice. Such as Rubana Cuormo, the Caregiver. Oh, people are gonna be so normal about this one, huh? Like most elders, Caregiver's powers aren't exactly defined, but she definitely is psychic or empathic to some extent, and also has healing abilities. She uses these powers and her immortal existence to be the prime nurturer of all life that she can come across. I am very sorry to disappoint probably a statistically significant chunk of you here, but Caregiver is one of the less frequently seen elders. She's only appeared in one arc of the 1990s Quasar series, which is actually where a lot of the lesser known elders appear. Much of this arc deals with what is essentially the egg of a weird cosmic entity that some of the elders are trying to steal power from before it hatches. Caregiver is also present here, but not to drain the egg, rather she's trying to ensure that the cosmic space baby is born successfully before the other elders can kill it. From the little we know, it does seem like Caregiver's goals are genuine. She really does just want to protect and nurture life throughout reality with no evil intent behind that. So despite her not appearing very much, you all now know that there is a canon character in the Marvel Universe who can best be described as Cosmic Mommy. You can't come for me for saying it, it's just true. That's the objectively best way to describe Caregiver. After that, we are going to swing so far in the other direction, going from the nice, kind Caregiver to the Champion, who is an asshole. Not even really evil a lot of the time, just an asshole. The Champion's real name is Trico Slatteris, a great name because it somehow captures this man's horrendous vibe exactly. The Champion's elder purpose is fighting people. Not even like overwhelming them with cool cosmic power, I mean one-on-one brawling. That's what he has dedicated his immortality to. That alone is not that funny, like it's a little funny, but the thing that makes it hilarious is that the Champion only fights in an official, controlled format. He kidnaps people just to fight him hand to hand, no weapons allowed, in a ring, and he is comedically discerning about who he is willing to fight. He refuses to fight Thor because Thor is magically tied to Mjolnir and therefore cannot technically fight without a weapon, apparently. He refuses to fight Hulk because he is a, quote, mindless brute, and that's not the kind of fighting that Champion wants to do, even though Hulk is a good component. He disqualifies Namor before the tournament even begins because after kidnapping his contestants, Champion gives them an opportunity to train, and when Namor says, no, I'm not going to waste my time on training, that apparently disqualifies him, and so out he goes. Wildest of all, the Champion will not fight women under any circumstance. Not even as like an honor chivalry kind of thing. No, he calls them lesser beings. He's just canonically incredibly sexist. That would end up being his undoing though, as Champion would break his code against fighting women one time to fight She-Hulk. And Jen kicked his ass so badly that he changed his name for a while, no longer going by the Champion, and instead being so embarrassed that he called himself the Fallen One. He would take the Champion name back later, but now we know that it's unearned, which I guess is the natural consequence of calling yourself the Champion in a tournament where you choose the competitors and set all of the rules. He is such a loser, and I just know this dude would have a podcast if the opportunity presented itself to him. Now we do get to a cool one though, one of the two most important and the first elder to ever be seen on the page. Of course, I am talking about Tanlir Tivan, the Collector. If you had only heard of one elder before this video, chances are it was Collector, or maybe Grandmaster, but Collector was the first one to appear in the MCU, and is also used as the starting point for a whole lot of Marvel spin-off media. The Collector collects things, obviously, but the important part to note is that his collection is not limited to any single category. He is immortal after all, and therefore does not have to narrowcast. He can get everything. Like some that we've already talked about, this purpose is not necessarily bad and could even be helpful in a lot of cases, especially since Collector's original intent for his collection was explicitly as a good thing. Tivan did not just start gathering things to hoard them selfishly, it was for preservation. In his mind, the collection was there so that after inevitable apocalyptic events, records and examples of destroyed things would remain so that normalcy could be restored. This is great, but over billions of years, he became a little bit manic and obsessive over his collection, and since that collection also includes people, you see where the problems arise. There are so many stories which begin with the general premise of Collector has kidnapped people, either trapping them or sometimes forcing them to fight Grandmaster and his trapped minions under the many, many permutations of the Contest of Champions title. Despite the character's over 100 appearances, there really isn't that much more for me to say about him. Collector is a pretty one-note character. Most of his storylines are either him kidnapping somebody or somebody needing something from his collection. That's not a knock against the character though, he serves a narrative purpose and he fills that role very well. There are two quick other things I do want to note before we move on though. First off, Collector is one of the very few elders to have a family, which is weird given the concept of the elders, but I'm going to come back to them towards the end of the video because I have a whole section on how the elders can have family members and how that works with their power, so we'll talk about them then. Also, this is apparently not what Collector actually looks like. I genuinely didn't know this until researching for this video, but apparently his more human-like appearance is just a disguise, and when Collector really needs to let loose with Power Primordial, he turns into his true form, which looks like this. Yeah, that's Thor he's manhandling there. He is much scarier in this state. Moving on, we have another very nice thematic contrast. Seems that alphabetical order is actually pretty good for this kind of video format. We go from the Collector, who is one of the most important and lore-affecting elders, to the Contemplator, who is the exact opposite of that. You don't even have to go as far as his name to get an idea of what Contemplator's deal is. He is very clearly designed with Buddhist aesthetics in mind, and as such, his elder purpose is meditation and achieving harmony with the universe. With near infinite time and the Power Primordial amplifying his connection to the cosmos, this is a surprisingly achievable goal, and so Contemplator doesn't really affect anything outside of himself. He kind of just chills. There was one time where he briefly seemed to team up with Grandmaster for one of the evil elder plots, but this was immediately revealed to be a Skrull impersonating Contemplator, as the elder was just kind of still chilling in his cosmic garden, and the only other time he's really gotten into the thick of things was when he kind of teamed up with Deadpool of all characters. Admittedly, team up might be a slightly strong word here, but Contemplator did pick Deadpool as his chosen hero to fight a cosmic monster that was devouring the consciousness of reality. Why did he choose Deadpool for this? Well, because Deadpool's own consciousness is too weird and messed up and meta to be successfully devoured, which Contemplator, thanks to his universal connection, apparently knew. Despite his general neutrality, Contemplator and his power do have some use to the magical sphere of the Marvel Universe, as shown in the fantastic comic Gods by Jonathan Hickman, which if you've watched my channel for enough time, you've definitely heard me rant about before. In this comic, we see that if you manage to get access to the Contemplator's garden and bring him a suitable gift, he will repay that generosity with a gift of his own. And in keeping with his cosmic harmony bit, that gift has some weird fate stuff going on and will be whatever you need in that moment, which makes it extremely helpful. Now we continue, and looking at my alphabetical list here, we get another contrast, because Contemplator is one of the most simple elders, and the next one is maybe the most complicated of the entire roster, because, well, let me start with this. As I said in the general explanation section at the beginning, the three rough qualifications for entry into the Elders of the Universe Club are being the last of your species, possessing the power primordial, and dedicating that power and immortality to a singular purpose. Anyway, the next member is Ego the Living Planet, who doesn't fit any of those. I'm gonna do my best to explain why Ego is here, but let me start by just clarifying this explicitly. Ego is definitely one of the Elders of the Universe. In fact, he's a very important one because Ego is the Elders' headquarters in a sense. When they meet on rare occasions, they often meet on Ego. That's a very cool idea, and that is probably also the real reason why he's an elder. It is just rule of cool, but at the very least, Ego's original origin does kind of line up with the elder concept. In Ego's first status quo, he was just a planet that gained sentience. There wasn't a lot of complexity there, he was just a planet, and then he became a living planet. This is not a perfect one-to-one for how the Elders work. He's not technically the last of his species, but he was the only one of his species, and since the Elders are a club and not a strict cosmic role, I guess he was allowed in off that. His backstory would get retconned completely sometime later though, and in his new status quo, Ego was actually a science experiment conducted by a being named the Stranger, who, funny enough, we will be talking about later in this video. According to the new origin, Ego was actually once a humanoid named Egros, but then thanks to the Stranger's weird science, he was fused with every living being on his planet and the planet itself, with Egros' consciousness being warped and transformed into the being that is Ego. So this also kind of works for the last of the species thing, in a way. He's the life of a whole planet all combined into one thing. That lines up enough. But there's also a problem here in that this origin confirms the existence of other living planets. So we can't take Ego as the only living planet, making him the last of his race. There are others out there. Also, even if we give him the benefit of the doubt and say that fulfills the last of the species requirement, he doesn't have the power primordial, and he also does not have a singular purpose, unless being a planet counts as a purpose, which I think is a stretch. So, I really don't know why Ego counts as an elder, and genuinely the best explanation that I have is that the other elders probably thought it was cool to have a living planet as their club HQ, so they admitted him off that logic. That has never been explicitly stated, but I don't have a better explanation. Getting back to elders who fit the general concept, we have who I think is my least favorite of them just because he's kinda lame. This guy's real name is, dear lord, Zamanathan Rambunazeth. Thank God I have set the precedent of calling them by their elder names, so we will call him the Explorer. Look, the only reason that Explorer is not the most obscure elder is the fact that we have seen him on the page and know what he looks like, which we did not get for the Architect. But Explorer does not do anything. He's only appeared in 3 comics ever. One of them was a cameo, and the other 2 are from that same storyline where the elders were fighting over the weird cosmic egg, and even in that, he's just kind of there to pad out the roster. To be fair to Explorer though, he is kind of a joke character. I don't know how much of a joke he's intended to be, but I can't deny that his appearance is hilarious. He only shows up to the cosmic egg because nobody there knows what it is, and he says that as the Explorer, he, quote, has laid first claim to discovery rights to said being. And then Quasar says, hey, no, I actually know what this thing is, it's not new, and upon learning that this is not a new thing to discover, Explorer leaves. And then he's gone. That's all he ever does. Making this bit even better is the fact that he did not find the cosmic being first. He admits a page prior that Caregiver was the one that stumbled upon it, but he's claiming the discovery anyway because he's Explorer and that's what he does. Between that and his general design, I think Explorer might be a jab at the conquistadors and maybe Christopher Columbus, which, if true, is very funny actually. Now we reach another one whose inclusion in the Elders is ambiguous at best. I'm not really sure what's going on with this one, but this is Father Time. He's an Elder, I can say that for sure. As for other things, well, let me just explain. We're gonna get into some back-end production stuff here. According to the Marvel Wiki, which is a very well-researched and reliable source, Father Time has 6 appearances credited to his name. Most of these are just as Father Time, like the mythical, proverbial, legendary, I don't know what the best word is here, but Father Time like the Father Time you're thinking of. 4 out of 6 of these appearances are pre-1960, so before the Marvel Universe as we really understand it today. He showed up in anthology comics, not as a singular character, but again as Father Time. When one of these anthologies needed a character to meet Father Time, there he was, and because presumably there's only one Father Time, these are all credited as the same guy. His next appearance after these is in the main Marvel Universe, but after over 30 years in 1991. This is Captain America issue 383. And the whole point is that Captain America meets a weird guy claiming to be Father Time, who then sends him on an adventure to meet a bunch of historical figures from American legend. He encounters Johnny Appleseed and John Henry and Paul Bunyan, and at the end of this, he confronts Father Time directly, and Father Time just straight up says, I'm an elder of the universe, directly comparing to Grandmaster and Collector, and he says that his life's pursuit is traveling around the universe, finding ways to commemorate significant events. And the reason he's here now is that it's Captain America's 50th anniversary, and so he's doing all of this stuff just to commemorate that, I guess? And apparently, the end goal of this is him killing Captain America, because Steve disappearing on his 50th anniversary is like something that's going to amplify his mystique in history or something like that. I don't know. Steve obviously survives, and then he encounters Father Time again as he's chasing him down, and it's Hawkeye in a costume. It's as weird and abrupt as it sounds, but apparently Hawkeye had put on this costume and pretended to be a villain so that he could get Cap to chase him and lead him to a surprise party that the rest of the Avengers had set up for the anniversary. How did the weird time travel adventure work, you might be wondering? Well, that is left intentionally ambiguous. Father Time might be a real guy who had then set up this weird Hawkeye thing to cover his tracks, or it could have all just been a hallucination that Steve had. That question is never answered. It would remain unanswered for 25 years. Father Time never showed up again, not even as the sort of mythical figure. There was just never a Father Time reference. And then, in Contest of Champions issue 6, there's a big sort of slideshow scene of all the Elders of the Universe, and Father Time is there in one panel, thus confirming that he is a real Elder, for as little appearances as he has. That was in 2016, and he's never shown up again past this. So out of his 6 appearances, if we remove the 4 where he is a disconnected mythical figure, he has 2 comics. One where he's apparently Hawkeye in a costume, and 2 where he has 1 panel confirming that he is real. And that's all he's got. But he's an Elder. It is pretty explicitly confirmed that he is an Elder, so into this video he went. We're going to stay in that sort of realm for the next one because this is another strange one. Fortunately, this is the last of the ambiguous Elders. The remaining 10 after this are all going to go back to form. But before we get to that, we have to go over Gara. Gara has only appeared in one arc ever, that being a Guardians of the Galaxy and X-Men crossover called the Black Vortex. The event revolves around an artifact known simply as the Black Vortex, which is like a magic mirror that instantaneously evolves anybody who looks into it and accepts its power. Gara is a very old alien, belonging to a species called the Viscardi, who were the first people to encounter the Black Vortex, and were subsequently torn apart and had their whole civilization destroyed thanks to misuse of its power. Now, in the present day, the Black Vortex has resurfaced, and so Gara has shown up again to destroy it once and for all. Pretty standard sci-fi superhero concept, and it's a fun event. I would recommend it. The thing that makes it complicated for our purposes is how Gara introduces herself. I guess she does make her origins relatively clear. She bursts out of a spaceship and says, quote, "I am Gara, the last of the Viscardi, an Elder of the Universe." So she's an Elder, I guess. Now, to be fair, she does fit one of the main 3 qualifications to a T. Gara is the last of her species. However, we don't know if she has the power primordial. She might not, it's never made clear. What we definitely know, though, is that she does not seem to dedicate herself to a singular purpose, and we also never see her interacting with the other Elders. She definitely could have encountered them at some unseen point during her very long life and just been admitted into the club in passing. I assume that's what happened if she's openly claiming to be an Elder, which she does do several times. And then as for her purpose, well, we only ever see her try to destroy the Black Vortex. That is the one reason she is in the storyline. We see her origin, where the Vortex destroys her society, and then time skip into the future, she has been on a never-ending quest to smash the thing. So, I guess her Elder purpose is destroying the Black Vortex? Maybe. That is never stated, but it would kinda make sense more than any other option. This is also supported by where her arc ends. Gara does not destroy the Black Vortex, but she does become its guardian. We last see her hovering in a sort of stasis with the Vortex in the center of a star where nobody can access it. So if you sort of combine destroying it and now defending it, her Elder purpose is apparently preventing the Black Vortex from being used, which does fit the qualifications. It's just a lot more narrow-casted than I thought the Elder purposes could be. I will say, I actually don't hate that idea. The concept of an Elder whose purpose is guarding one specific item or location is an interesting one. It's just weird that Gara is the only one who's like this. Plus, it is, again, never explicitly stated. I'm just taking that as her purpose by implication. With Gara addressed, though, we are done with ambiguous elders. All of the remaining ones are very definitive, and the next one, Gardener, doesn't just have a clear purpose, he is actually connected to other parts of the Marvel Universe. Gardener's purpose is cultivating plant life. As elders go, his morals have shifted a lot over the years. Most of the time he's neutral, but he has occasionally been an antagonist, and I would also say that his purpose is on the whole a good thing. Gardener mostly travels throughout reality, terraforming planets and turning dead worlds into lush ones full of vegetation. For much of Gardener's publication history, he didn't do that much. He would show up in storylines with the other elders and then occasionally on his own, but in the last 10 years or so, he has been involved in stuff more directly. And I would say that in current canon, he is the third most relevant of all the elders. There's a big gap between the number 1 and 2 slots and then Gardener, but still he holds third. The main reason for his increased relevance is that Gardener's lore has been heavily tied to Groot. This began in 2017 when Gardener went insane for a little bit because Loki poisoned him, and while under the influence of this horrible sickness he was experiencing, he killed Groot and then used the alien's splinters to grow a weird mutated army of plant creatures. Gardener would shortly get cured, at which point he brought Groot back to life, but this idea that these two characters could be related stuck around, and 6 years later in 2023, it was revealed that Gardener created Groot, at least indirectly. The species that Groot belongs to is known as the Flora Colossi, hailing from a planet simply called Planet X, which is a holdover from very old Groot lore. Billions of years ago, the ecosystem of this planet and some nearby ones were kickstarted by the Gardener, which is why the dominant species is plant-based. In fact, this planet was Gardener's masterpiece, which is a whole complicated thing. The Flora Colossi and Groot are like a self-propagating pseudo-hive mind. That's the best way I can describe it, at least. They are spread across 5 planets known as the Branch Worlds, specifically set up in a cycle that will prevent their species from dying out. All the branch worlds exist in an almost seasonal cycle, where when one of them is about to die out for whatever reason, it will instead go dormant and eject sentient pollen out into space to the next branch world. That pollen will then latch onto the dormant remains of that ecosystem, revitalize it, and the process begins anew. So it's like one ecosystem split across these 5 different worlds that just keeps moving from one to the other to avoid total extinction. Really wild. This was an incredibly complex Guardians of the Galaxy series, but I do like that concept a lot. It's very cool sci-fi. Other than being Groot's new origin, though, there's not too much to the Gardener, unlike the next Elder. Now we've gotten to the second most relevant of all of them, sometimes the most relevant depending on the era. Let's talk about Grandmaster. Grandmaster is also the other Elder who plays a relatively major role in the MCU, but while the Jeff Goldblum iteration of the character is fun, he is entirely different than the comics Grandmaster. Movie Grandmaster is a pretty silly guy, dangerously eccentric, sure, but comics Grandmaster is a menace. Out of all of the Elders, Grandmaster has one of the widest ranging purposes. His whole thing is playing games. Any type of game, no matter the genre, and more concerningly, no matter the scale. Grandmaster will happily sit down and play chess or cards with somebody. Or he'll kidnap a bunch of superheroes and force them into terrifying death games with the lives of everybody around hanging in the balance. As such, he is usually the other half of the many Contest of Champions events. Grandmaster versus Collector is a very, very common thing to see, and they're not really enemies, they're just playing games against each other. Grandmaster because games are his whole thing, and Collector because he likes using the heroes in his collection to fight other heroes. Grandmaster shows up quite a bit in a lot of different but similar contexts, simply because, I'll be very upfront about this, he is also a great plot device, maybe even more so than Collector is, but also like Collector, that is not a knock against the character. Grandmaster is great for the stories that need him. Grandmaster works perfectly as a narrative excuse to get heroes to fight each other, or more interestingly, to put heroes and villains in a situation where the stakes and situations of the battle are distinctly different than usual. The best example of this, in my opinion, is a comic called Avengers No Surrender, which I highly recommend. It is one of my personal favorite Avengers comics of all time. The general premise is that Grandmaster takes a bunch of heroes and villains and general weirdos from around the universe and then forces them into this tournament of team fights. The combat isn't just about brawling, though. They are objective-based scenarios. Grandmaster drops these things called pyramoids all over the planet, and these pyramoids transform the landscape around them into these crazy arenas. Whichever team gets the pyramoid at the center is the victor. If you are a Marvel Rivals person, please go read this book. The video game and tabletop game inspirations here are extremely clear, and this is a main universe comic. It's not an AU, these are main universe characters being forced into video game fights, and it rules. Though I will warn you, to do a full breakdown of all the Elders, I am going to need to spoil a couple things from Avengers No Surrender, but there won't be a lot of these, and I will set up the video's timestamps so that they are very easy to just skip forward if you want to avoid them, and obviously I will tell you when I'm about to spoil something so that you can do that. There is one of those spoiler points coming up right now, actually, so if you want to go into No Surrender completely blind, skip ahead to... I haven't recorded it yet. Skip ahead to whatever number's on the screen if you don't want spoilers. So, the last Elder that we just talked about was Grandmaster, and the next Elder that we're going to be talking about is Grandmaster. Now, I know I said that we were done with the ambiguous ones, so why are there two Grandmasters? Well, don't worry, this actually does make sense. Way back billions of years ago, when the Elders were deciding on their immortal purposes, they picked those purposes before they decided to change their names to match them. This meant that the Elders, still using their original names, were already doing their things, and therefore Grandmaster was already playing games. He was not playing alone, though. Big twist, there were two Elders whose immortal purpose was playing games. Yeah, there's no actual rule that they can't double up on who is doing what. That is very well within the extremely loose rules that govern the Elders of the universe. The two players of games were very close to each other. They had something of a rivalry going, but it was a friendly rivalry. At least until the Elders decided to pick their new names, and one of them decided to call himself the Grandmaster. Notably, this is not the Grandmaster that you are more familiar with. Somewhat annoyingly, his name before this was never actually revealed, so I just have to call him the original Grandmaster, which hopefully will make enough sense. The other game player, whose first name was Endwygast, got kind of annoyed that his rival named himself Grandmaster. That's a little bit arrogant. Sure, they were rivals, but they were supposed to be equals. And while the Elders could double up on purposes, it was decided that they couldn't double up on names. So that kind of made Grandmaster just seem better than his opponent. This minor annoyance spiraled so badly that their friendly rivalry became a lot less friendly, to such an extent that Endwygast eventually proposed a final game, one in which the stakes were eternal. The loser of this game would be barred from existence forever. The original Grandmaster lost this game, and despite pleading with his former friend, he was banished outside of the multiverse. With his rival gone, Endwygast just kinda stole his name and was the Grandmaster going forward. I told you Grandmaster was a menace. This dude sucks. In the meantime, original Grandmaster was just kinda stuck. He was still alive and still conscious, but he was now located in a place, or quote-unquote place, called the Far Shore, which is one of the weird extra-dimensional metaphysical realms outside of Marvel cosmology. He was only able to break his way back into reality thanks to the Secret Wars event of 2015. The big focal point of this crossover is that the entire multiverse was destroyed and then rebuilt, and with that came an opening that Grandmaster could re-enter through. Extremely bitter at the new Grandmaster for stealing everything from him, original Grandmaster changed his name to the Challenger and approached Grandmaster for a rematch. This is what Avengers No Surrender is. It is Grandmaster versus Challenger, which is why I put this in the little spoiler section. Technically, for going in alphabetical order, I could have put Challenger at C, but I thought it was more interesting if I just shoved him in here as the second Grandmaster. First Grandmaster. Whatever. Challenger's status in current Marvel canon is actually unknown. He ends up getting sent back to the far shore at the end of No Surrender, but then in a follow-up comic, somebody goes to check on him and finds that his chains are broken and he's just gone. And we don't know where he went. That has not been followed up on yet, so he's out there somewhere doing who knows what. Okay, now the first of 2 Avengers No Surrender spoiler sections is done. If you are just now rejoining us, hello. I hope you enjoy reading Avengers No Surrender, because you're clearly planning on doing so if you skipped. Please do tell me in the comments what you think of it when you do. You are unfortunately joining us at another one of the boring elders, but that does mean we can at least cover them quickly. This is Judicator, another one that appears only in that Quasar arc with the Cosmic Baby, so they're not really an independent character, they're just another member of the elders. Kind of unfortunate that we don't get to see them do much, because Judicator's concept has legs. They are a judge, traveling the universe and seeking out disputes that they can help resolve. We never get to see them actually do this, of course, because like I said, they only appear in this one Quasar book and in Elders of the Universe team shots. But we do know that they can use their power primordial to help them in judging situations to great effect. Apparently, Judicator can reveal truth, and while that's a very nebulous power, they do use it at one point to force a Skrull to turn back to their natural form. There's potential for this to be great, especially because Judicator's power relies on other people much more than the Elders usually do. Many of the other Elders are doing things by themselves, for themselves, but Judicator needs other people to be there for their purpose to be fulfilled, and they have to strive for fairness in the eyes of others. This never actually gets developed, but I could see it going somewhere, maybe. Oh, I just looked at my list. This next one is fun. I'm gonna break the format a little bit and not show you their little title card immediately. You will see why in a second. This Elder is named the Obliterator, and he is very unique among the Elders because he was immortal before the power primordial kicked in. And actually, him getting power primordial was his own fault. Before becoming an Elder, when his species was still very much in existence, Obliterator discovered that he could not die. I don't think the reason for this has ever been fully explained. It might be that he's a mutant, but I don't know if that was ever locked down. Regardless, this knowledge drove him a little bit insane, and he decided to give purpose towards his immortal life by killing every other member of his species. He proceeded to do so very effectively, and when every other member of his kind had perished at his hand, he was the last of his species, power primordial activated, and he was admitted to the Elders shortly after. So yes, for anyone who was wondering this, you can absolutely activate power primordial on yourself if you kill everybody else. There is one guy that did that. At this point, though, what was he going to do? He had sort of jumped the gun in assigning his purpose before ever joining the Elders, and when he did become part of the club, he just took that purpose and extended it, now dedicating himself to killing everything and everyone of every species, because that's a totally normal and stable and great thing to dedicate your life to. Why would the other Elders ever admit a guy like this? I don't really know. I guess it's just because they're also immortal, so he could never kill them, and therefore they weren't really in danger, so they just let him in. He is, of course, one of the most dangerous Elders because he is jam-packed with all sorts of weapons and fighting techniques. Dude's name is Obliterator. He's very good at breaking shit. Here's the thing, though, that some of you have definitely noticed. I haven't shown you any pictures of Obliterator. This man surely looks terrifying, right? He killed his entire species before getting cosmic power and then went on to kill many, many more. He has fought a lot of superheroes, a lot of supervillains, millions if not billions of other people off screen. Obliterator is a force to be reckoned with, and he looks like this. Oh my god. Oh, this is one of the worst designs I've ever seen in comics. Obliterator's design it's just horrendous. Even when they try to modernize it, it looks still pretty bad, maybe even worse. The color scheme, the weird boxiness of everything, the patterns on his bodysuit, the fact that this man who is canonically packed with weapons at all times doesn't have any weapons other than like nebulous shoulder rectangles. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it, I hate it. Also, Obliterator's original name before he became an Elder is Matt Pockle. He just has like a normal sounding human name. It is spelled a little bit differently, so maybe it's supposed to be Mott instead of Matt. But this dude's name being Matt is just so hilarious that that's what I have to believe. He's just so stupid with his shoulder bricks and his forearm bricks and his pec bricks. I could laugh at his design all day, but we need to move on. We especially need to move on because the next Elder comes with a bit of a mystery to him, but one that I think I actually figured out. This is the Possessor, and he is the only traditional Elder whose name does not immediately tell you what he does. Possessor's elder purpose is learning things. Sometimes comics kinda try to write it off by saying that his purpose is possessing knowledge, but come on, it is learning and knowing things, which the name Possessor does not make clear at all. So what's the deal with that? We'll start at the beginning here. Possessor's name before becoming an Elder was Camo Tharn, and he first appeared in Thor issue 235 in 1975. In this book, he was not described as an Elder, at least not yet. He was just an independent villain. Specifically, he was a guy way out in space who had a massive library and a bunch of powerful magical knowledge, as well as an item called the Rune Staff, which Thor needed. So Thor went to Tharn's cool space library to take the staff from him. Even though he does not have an elder purpose yet, it's immediately clear that his thing would be gaining knowledge. All of this is happening in his giant library, and that is brought up many times. So you would think that when he became an elder, he would be called the Librarian or the Archiver or something of that nature. There's a lot of thematic options. Of course, none of these options were used, and the first time that Camo Tharn is referred to as an Elder is in a West Coast Avengers annual comic. He's not actually a character in this, other Elders of the universe are, but Tharn himself only appears in a little flashback shot showcasing some of the other Elders. Here he is referred to as the Possessor, but that is clearly Camo Tharn. From this point on, he is always treated as an Elder, but his purpose kinda flip-flops, likely just because the name Possessor is super ambiguous. He is often referred to as a seeker of knowledge, but sometimes his thing is just having things. In his most recent appearance, he guards a sort of bank vault full of safety deposit boxes, which is a lot more literal application of possessing. So the mystery then is why? Why is this guy who had such an obvious layup for the Librarian or Archiver or whatever name called Possessor? This stumped me for a bit, but I do think I figured it out. One of the reasons that Tharn was more villainous in his first appearances in Thor was that he was being driven insane by the Rune Staff that he was using to channel his power. He was using this thing to gain knowledge, but since he was using it incorrectly, what he was actually doing was absorbing the minds and consciousnesses of everybody around him. He wasn't killing them, very importantly, he was just taking them into his own little mindscape, and this started to drive him crazy. Thor helped him get out of this, and he was restored to sanity, at which point he thanked Thor for ridding him of the spirits that were possessing him. I would bet a lot of money that is what the writer of West Coast Avengers Annual was calling back to. He is called the Possessor because he was being possessed by hundreds of alien spirits. Now granted, he was not the one doing the possessing, but still, that is the best through line that I can find. After West Coast, he is still called Possessor in Silver Surfer and Quasar because the name had already been established. But these comics do not go to the lengths of explaining the hyper-specific reference that gave him that name, so it just got lost over the years and his purpose got diluted along with it. Of course, I cannot be sure that this is exactly what happened, but since Possessor is the only Elder to have such a vague name, some explanation was demanded, and I think that's a pretty reasonable one. Next, we have... oh god. Nope! Gotcha! Now that some of your eyes have popped out of your heads like you're a cartoon wolf, which I know happened because it always does whenever I show people this character, I can ruin her for you immediately. This is the Profiteer, and she is so money obsessed that she makes Elon Musk look like a communist. Profiteer once bought child soldiers and then sold tickets so that people could watch them fight to the death. She is the worst. From that little speech and, the name, it should be incredibly obvious that Profiteer's elder purpose is making as much money as possible. And as is the nature of large-scale business, the best way to do that is through wildly unethical means. She is an arms dealer as one of her biggest business ventures. Profiteer intentionally stoked the fires of the Kree-Skrull War so that she could sell weapons to both sides of it the whole time. She's only been in one story arc so far, which is the one that I referenced just a second ago with the child soldiers. She struck a deal with generals from both the Kree and the Skrulls to acquire a child from both species and then force those kids to fight each other constantly so that each side of the war could see what the best killing techniques they could use on their enemies were. They were just forced into battle simulations day in and day out, finding new ways to murder each other, while Profiteer was really the only one that benefited. And of course, as I mentioned, she sold tickets to this. Fortunately, I can report that this story arc does have a very happy ending, which is that the Profiteer gets absolutely ruined. The Kree-Skrull War gets ended by Hulkling, who unites the empires, meaning that her arms-dealing business dries up. This also, by proxy, dries up the casino that she was operating out of, and then her main spaceship and base of operations gets blown up by the Human Torch. So she loses basically everything, and as for the kids, they're doing great too because they get adopted by the Thing and Alicia Masters. And this is not just a one-off, this has been a lasting status quo. Like, Ben and Alicia have these adopted alien kids and they are regularly part of the family now. It's great and I love them. Now, I do have to acknowledge that even though I have explained very clearly what Profiteer's all about, I am still going to get hear me out comments about her, but just, look, if you absolutely need to simp for one of the elders, at least pick Caregiver. Do not simp for the super capitalist. Have some dignity. Unfortunately, the next elder is also going to stay in the same super capitalist realm as Profiteer, though. This one is Promoter, who's an elder based on marketing. Promoter also only appears in one comic, that being the very self-contained Thor vs. Hulk Champions of the Universe miniseries. She begins this teamed up with the Champion as the guy who is setting up and marketing his tournament matches, but over the course of the comic, it's revealed that she's actually doing her own mastermind plot. She was purposefully orchestrating all of these fights so that she could take powerful artifacts off of the combatants, but before she ends up putting these to use, she gets talked down by Bruce Banner and flips sides, becoming a good guy. Then she walks through a portal to who knows where and has not been seen since, so she's not a super relevant one. There is one weird thing I do have to note about the Promoter though. In the second issue of this series, she seems to appear with two previously unseen elders known as the Commentator and the Statistician, but I don't think these are actually real elders. Their appearance is never fully explained, but they do appear only on the Promoter's TV show Champion Watch and look strikingly similar to the Promoter herself, which due to her singular nature as an elder should be unlikely. As even better evidence, she has a very fun bit to her character where she changes her outfit and appearance near constantly to match the vibe of whatever she is doing marketing for. So with that information, I think these are probably illusions or duplicates of herself that she has used Power Primordial to summon just to co-host her show. I'm not sure about that, but it makes the most sense in context. Now we have reached the final two elders, and alphabetical order is going to work great once again, because thematically speaking, we are going to come almost full circle. I have to say almost in there for reasons that will make sense in a second. The second to last elder is the Runner. The Runner wants to go fast. That's it. He is a very simple soul. He just wants to zoom around. Technically, there is another layer to the Runner's purpose. He wants to be truly free and also to see every possible corner of the universe. But usually his thing is represented as just going really fast. That's all he really does in practice. The Runner is fun, and as elders go, he is pretty entirely harmless. Importantly, he is not a superhero. He is a speedster and definitely could save people if he wanted to, but he doesn't want to. He doesn't have any interest in that. He just wants to run around. So arguably that could make him a little bit evil just by pure selfishness, but he's not malicious. He just only cares about going fast. Despite the simplicity of his concept, Runner does actually have an entire story arc spinning just out of his thing. He holds galactic marathons to determine who is the fastest being in the universe, which he usually wins, but not in the one that we see. This is actually a wildly notorious storyline in Marvel history because the first stage of it is a tryout for Earth-based speedsters only. Runner is not Earth-based, and so he does not run in it, but the Flash does. Like the Flash from DC Comics? Yeah, he's here, technically. In this arc, a mysterious speedster just kind of appears out of nowhere. He dresses like this, with clothes too tattered to be recognizable, and he has amnesia. He doesn't even remember his own name, but he can get something kind of close to it, which is Buried Alien. Not Barry Allen, no, of course not. Buried Alien. It's different. This is a riff off of Barry Allen's apparent death in the DC comic Crisis on Infinite Earths. He runs so fast that he disintegrates, and then Marvel just kind of did a thing where, like, what if he didn't disintegrate? What if he went to the Marvel Universe and appeared in this one singular arc? It is a joke, it is not an official crossover whatsoever. You can take it as canon if you want, it doesn't really affect anything, and it is often considered by fans that this is Barry Allen, at least in some form. Taking on the codename of Fast Forward, he wins the Earth trial and goes on to participate in the Galactic Marathon along with other Earth qualifying contestant Makari. Fast Forward does not win the Galactic Marathon though, but Makari does. And Runner was also running in this race, which means that Makari is canonically faster than the guy whose whole singular purpose is going fast. Ooh, that must have been a rough day for the Runner. The reason I say this almost comes full circle is that in the Runner section, I do get to reference the first Elder that we mentioned, because the Runner is the guy who commissioned the Architect. The weird cosmic raceway for the Galactic Marathon was built by Architect apparently, and this is where we get the one panel confirming their existence. Now we reach the last one, and the video is not quite over because I have a couple other things I need to very quickly address, but we will be ending the actual Elder roster section, not with a bang, but with a whimper, because the last one is kind of nothing. This is the Traitor. He is another one of the many Elders that appeared in the original team shots in the Quasar and Silver Surfer comics. His thing is apparently also making money in some way or another, but being part of these group shots, we never see him actually do it, and then the Money Elder concept got sniped by Profiteer, who did actually do things with the role. So Traitor just isn't relevant. Funny enough though, he does contribute to this whole thing coming almost full circle, because the one story arc that Traitor is actually relevant in is the Galactus murder plot orchestrated by Astronomer, another one of the first ones that we talked about. So the first two in the list loop into the last two in the list, but like staggered by one. So close to full circle, I'm just gonna count it. We are now done. We have covered all of the official canon Elders of the universe. But there are a couple more characters who have dubious Elder status, and for the sake of being thorough, I do want to mention them. Don't worry, it will be quick. One singular comic, Avengers Assemble from 2012, includes two other established characters in a roster of the Elders of the universe. However, neither of them really make sense. The first of these is the Stranger, who I very briefly mentioned way earlier in this video, because he is the weird cosmic scientist that experimented on and created Ego the Living Planet. The Stranger also kind of fits the mold of the Elders, but in a weird adjacent way. He is the last of his kind, but in a similar way to Ego in that he is a combined being. The members of the Stranger species were not destroyed, they all fused into one singular, extremely powerful entity, and that is what the Stranger is. The Stranger also does have one singular purpose that he fulfills, that being weird science experiments. He is like a super scientist, and a super scientist elder who does a lot of unethical experiments could be interesting, but his name doesn't really fit that. I mean, it does end in ER, but he is not one who stranges. He's also never shown with the Elders outside of these two isolated issues, and in other established cosmic hierarchy diagrams, he is shown as distinctly separate from them. This is emphasized even more by the other character who is considered an Elder for this comic, the In-Betweener. If you've seen my much longer video on Marvel cosmology, then you have a better idea of what the in-betweener is, but to summarize him quickly, he is a cosmic embodiment of balance, specifically balance between order and chaos. He is not the last remaining member of his species, because he's not even a species. He's like a weird pseudo-god. He is definitely not an elder, like 100% for sure. He is well established to be a definitely different thing. And so between him and the stranger being included, I have a pretty decent guess that they were only put into this comic because their names both end in ER, and whoever was picking the roster, be that the writer or the artist, just kind of didn't do their research and stuck them in here because they assumed, incorrectly, that they were also elders. Even that aside, I am inclined to just disregard these two issues entirely because they treat the Elders like an entirely different thing than every other book. Avengers Assemble acted like they were cosmic gods, which they really aren't. At one point, Thor kind of implies that he can't do anything to them because they're just that powerful, when like, no, the Elders are definitely strong, but they are guys you can fight. They are immortal and they will heal from anything, but that takes some time. If you hit them hard enough with your hammer, Thor, you can take them off the board for a good long while. With those two lame exceptions out of the way, there is only one more question I need to answer, which is, how do the Elders of the Universe have families? I've said many times that one of the defining features is the power primordial, which you gain by being the last member of your species. So, can the Elders reproduce? And if they do, what happens to the power? Does it get split between them and their offspring, or are the cosmic laws of the power so strict that it will just go away entirely? While we don't know exactly what happens, there are a couple cases where we can look at it. Only 2 Elders have ever been shown to have living family members. The first is Collector, who has a wife and a daughter, or at least had a wife and a daughter. Collector's wife was named Matani, and she is probably not a member of Collector's species. I have to say probably because it's never been explicitly stated whether she is or not, but we do know that she was another member of the Elders, so in theory, she can't be Collector's species by definition. Matani has only appeared in 2 books ever, mostly in flashbacks, but despite this, she is very important to the lore of the Elders of the Universe because she is the first one who actually died. Remember way back in the beginning of this video, all the way towards the general explanation intro, where I said that the immortality of the Elders is tied to their will to live? The death of Matani is what gave them that information. It seems like Matani just got bored enough of eternal life that she no longer wanted to experience it, and therefore perished. Not wanting this to happen again, Collector came up with the idea that all of them should dedicate themselves to a singular purpose, and then the Elders got defined as their ongoing themes. Beyond being the catalyst for the Elders' entire bit though, Matani doesn't really give us a lot of context on how families work for the Elders because she is evidently not the same species. She doesn't clash with any of those rules. Collector and her just got together despite not being the same kind of being. However, Collector and Matani did have a child named Karina. Now, I'm not going to go into the biology of how that works, despite them being 2 different species, because, I don't know, they're comic book aliens, it's suspension of disbelief, whatever, they had a kid because they did. How exactly does Karina work with the power primordial, though? I also don't know. It's never really been explored, at least not to my knowledge. Plus, genetically, she seems to be a hybrid of the species of her parents, so how does that interact with things? More questions than answers. If absolutely nothing else, though, Karina does solidly confirm that Elders of the Universe can still reproduce, though we don't know how that affects their role in the cosmology. This leads very nicely into the next thing, which is also the other spoiler section for Avengers No Surrender. So skip to the timestamp that is on the screen. This is a really, really, really big spoiler, actually. Everyone gone who wants to be gone? Okay, great. Grandmaster also has a kid. Her name is Voyager, and she's very complicated, but for the sake of this video, I'm gonna try to go fast. In Avengers No Surrender, Voyager just kind of shows up out of nowhere. Everyone remembers her as a member of the Avengers. There's like a whole weird gaslighting thing going on where she was just always around. Voyager, part of the Avengers. Kind of similar to Zemnu if you've seen my video on that topic. A lot of similar gaslighting themes in my recent videos. I swear that's a coincidence. The biggest twist reveal in Avengers No Surrender is that Voyager is not a human like she was tricking everybody into believing, and is in fact the child of Grandmaster. Her real name is Vonnie Gast, and she was planted into the Avengers as Grandmaster's ace up his sleeve. At first glance, Voyager seems to be a standard Elder, other than the fact that she has a resemblance to her father, which implies that they are the same species. But she apparently has a singular purpose. She has the ER name, Voyager, one who voyages, and she also accesses what appears to be the power primordial to give her teleportation abilities. Really cool teleportation at that. She can also teleport into memories in a weird metaphorical sense. This is how she was gaslighting everyone, teleporting into memories, which is weird, but weird in a way that I think is very neat. Here's where things get strange though. As I was rereading Avengers No Surrender to make sure I had my information on Voyager correct, I realized we actually have no idea what Voyager is. Seriously, it's never explained even a little bit. We see a young Voyager alongside Grandmaster, so she did grow up next to him, and they also refer to each other as father and daughter, so they at least see each other in that way. But it is never actually stated that Voyager is Grandmaster's biological kid. Adding another layer to this mystery, Voyager's mother is never mentioned, and I don't mean seen or named, never mentioned at all in any capacity. We technically don't even know if Voyager has a mother. At this realization, I was very intrigued, so I started overanalyzing every single panel, and by doing this, I did actually stumble upon something really interesting. We know that over Voyager's life, Grandmaster has used her as a pawn in many, many different schemes. This one with the Avengers is just the latest in a long line of him cheating at his games using his daughter, basically. And while Voyager is monologuing about these times, she talks about her powers. She says that Grandmaster gave her these powers, they were not bestowed upon her by the power primordial. And most importantly, she says that this was the power she was given this time. Those two words change a lot. I am deep in the weeds of overthinking this at this point, but screw it, let's go along for the journey. Her saying this time heavily implies that she may have gotten different powers in different schemes. And if she's given different powers to cheat, and doesn't have the power primordial, and also doesn't have a mom in any sense that we see, and also looks exactly like Grandmaster despite that theoretically being an impossibility, I think Voyager is an artificial being. I don't think she's an Elder. I mean, I think she's part of the club in the sense that she was admitted, but not by actually fitting the rules. She was admitted by technicality like several other members were. She is not the last of her species. I don't think she is a species. I think she is just one thing that was somehow, by means I'm not entirely sure of, created by Grandmaster as an artificial kid that he could use to cheat. This is cool, it's a neat little detail, one that I could be entirely wrong about, but I do think it makes a lot of sense with the information I have available. It also doesn't shed any light on how Elders could theoretically reproduce. I still have no clue how the power primordial would work in that case, because the few examples we've seen of them having kids don't seem to apply to the powers and how they are defined. So, oh well, I don't actually have any answers to that. And now, I have officially covered every Elder and every dubious and side character Elder. Honestly, I am amazed I was able to get a video this long out of characters who, by definition, only do one thing each. I think the Elders are a very fun group and a nice batch of concepts. Sure, most of them don't appear very often, and even when they do, their plot lines are pretty straightforward. But that is because they are plot devices as much as they are characters. The Elders exist as writing tools. If you want to tell a story that has to do with one of the Elders' core concepts, you can just throw them in as an inciting incident. They are developed enough characters to not feel hacky, but also they're not going to take over the story more than the characters that are actually going to be the focus. In some weird ways, they are like setting elements a lot of the time more than things that affect the story from a character point. Because of this, there's not much more of a fancy conclusion that I can really do to this video, and I think that kind of works. The Elders are defined by the one thing that they do, and I mean that both from an in-universe perspective and a publication perspective. The Elders of the Universe simply all have their things, and if your comic needs a character who builds things, or charts the stars, or nurtures life, or has 1v1 brawls, or collects everything, or meditates on the universe, or pass, or discovers new stuff, or commemorates historical events, or guards the Black Vortex specifically, or cultivates plants, or plays a lot of games, or resolves disputes, or kills dudes, or possesses knowledge, or makes money, or markets stuff, or just goes really fast, then you know exactly who to find. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, I do hope you enjoyed. I'm gonna switch up the order of the announcements today, and first shout out my artist that I work with on these videos, Ruben Perez, because there were a couple new character poses in this video, yay! And there's actually a couple more coming in future videos, so look out for those. I just decided to get a bunch as a slightly delayed 100,000 subscriber special. Now the little promo thing that is usually first, I have a Patreon. If you go and check that out, you can find early and ad-free access to all of my videos, as well as an exclusive video every month. My username there is the exact same as it is here. There's also a link to it in the description of this video and my channel page. It's very easy to find, and extra special shout out to the people who already support me over there. It really does help me in continuing to make these videos for you guys. Now, for everyone who stuck around all the way to the end of this video, let's play a little game. Tell me in the comments what you think your elder purpose would be if you had to pick one thing for your immortal existence. You have to answer honestly, and I might regret asking some of you that, but you know what? I am curious to see what you internet weirdos answer.